Hello, and welcome to another episode of Panel on Panels, the podcast about all things comics and comics related. I'm your host, John Campbell. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Mike Ergoni.
Greetings.
Mr. Donovan Eilert.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
All right, and today we are joined once again by a fourth panelist, a returning guest panelist. Please welcome back to the show, Ian Eilert.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
You are now officially the Star Wars episode expert witness.
What? What?
The episode
What?
expert
Yep.
witness.
Yep. Nope. No,
But
it's been officially said.
He's recorded as many Star Wars
He's
episodes
wearing.
as you have.
He's wearing the badge.
Yep.
I crafted that badge myself.
I know. For Ian.
Yep.
We didn't
realize
tell you that,
Yeah.
but that's what it was being used for. Yeah. But no, of course, yeah. Last time Ian was on the show, we talked at great length about Star Wars:
As
The
it
Force
so
Awakens.
deserved.
Yes,
Definitely. Great movie.
a podcast that was about 45 minutes longer than the actual film.
And we're back for part 2 of it.
Here we go.
3 hours on The Force Awakens.
Now let's talk about all the subtext that we skipped over of that movie.
Now that we've seen it 8 more times,
Breakdown of BB-8's
yes, John,
vocabulary.
only 8.
how many times have you seen it, Gergani?
Do I really have to say out loud?
I think you do.
Okay, it's edging in on 10.
It's edging in on 10?
Look, there may be plans for later today.
Oh, my God. You have a problem, sir.
No, I have Star Wars.
I love Star Wars,
for the
but
first time in years.
two times, yeah. It does feel, I think I said this on the last one, but it does feel it's like, oh, it's nice to like put that back on and be like, yep, I'm a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Never took it off, John.
I know you never
Been
took it.
sleeping in it.
I know it got too hard for me at a certain point where it's just like, ew. But no, obviously Star Wars is other things than just movies.
It is all things, John.
It is all things. Disney would certainly have you believe that. Up to and including coffee creamer.
I did love picking up my Kylo Ren coffee creamer. I like it dark.
I didn't see the Kylo Ren.
Actually, there was no Kylo Ren. There was R2-D2,
okay.
there was C-3PO, there was Chewbacca, and there was Boba Fett.
Okay, I was going to say I missed a couple.
I missed the Boba Fett one. I didn't see that one.
He's working his way into every merchandise for every film ever at this point.
The characters I love are the characters who aren't even in the movies anymore, who are still all over the merchandise,
Yeah.
like Boba Fett and stuff, where you're just like,
Well, wait till Rogue One. We'll
oh,
see.
God.
All I'm saying is, like, they had a slight preview of the Rogue One Lego sets, and Slave One was there. That's all I'm saying.
I know, but we've also shown that the Lego sets will pretty much throw anything from that's remotely connected to a franchise into
Sure.
it.
Fair enough.
Because people always go like, spoilers from the Lego set. Clearly there's a scene where this happens. It's like, I don't think that's going to happen, man. Like, there's something for Batman v Superman where Batman's wearing, like, an Arctic expedition outfit. So I'm like,
Oh, I hope he does.
I don't think
He
that's
has to go break into the Fortress of Solitude.
That's not without reason.
Except for the
Maybe.
fact that the Fortress of Solitude, quote-unquote, blew up in Man of Steel.
There's a backup one.
Sure, yeah.
I'm sure that
He regrew it in, Superman 2, so...
yeah, he's always putting stuff back together.
Yep.
We're not talking about any of those things. We're talking about Star Wars, damn it.
Right, we're talking about Star Wars. We're now specifically talking about Star Wars comic books, something
Yes.
people probably expect us to do last time we talked about
Probably.
Star Wars, because I guess we're a comic book podcast.
For the most part.
Yeah, we occasionally talk about comic books.
Unless Star Wars is concerned,
Yeah,
and then we make exceptions.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're covering just the new Marvel trades, the
Yes.
first 4 that came out.
Yes, we're talking about so that people don't start going, "Where's Lando? Where's this?" We're specifically talking
Or where's
about,
all the Marvel or the Dark Horse stuff from?
right. Yeah, we're not
Years
getting into
and
that
years and
because
years.
that would be well over 3 hours of discussion about
I mean,
that.
I could.
And that would literally just be Mike Ergoni just talking for 3
yeah,
hours.
exactly.
Okay, explain this. All right. And then 45 minutes later. Okay,
Yeah.
now explain this. Got it.
So, do you guys want to know about Quinlan Vos? Because I'll tell you about
no.
Quinlan Vos.
Oh, no.
Well, we proved on a previous episode that I know exactly about Quinlan Vos.
That's true. That is true. We did. But yeah, exactly. This is sort of we talked before about how a lot of the expanded universe, or all of the expanded universe, basically, was eliminated from canon.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Well, the fact is that between Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, they're slowly introducing a lot of those elements back in to
Jesus.
the quote-unquote canon.
Come on.
John, those weren't bad ideas.
No, but what? How so? Because this is
Perfect example is the Black Sun Syndicate. They were in the Shadows of the Empire stuff.
Yeah.
So with the old canon swept
No,
away,
I don't necessarily. Do you think Shadows of the Empire is tossed out?
Yeah, that is under the Legends banner now.
Yeah, this is also an interesting thing where it's like when you get into what's expanded universe, because I don't.
No, that was firmly expanded universe.
Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah.
But that took place during the original trilogy.
Yes.
But I'm saying that there's nothing that makes me think that couldn't have happened.
Sure, but that's the same. That's true for almost all the expanded universe.
No, there's much of the. I'm talking about like a lot of the post Jedi stuff just couldn't have happened based on Force Awakens.
Sure, but Shadows of the Empire has to be thrown in with all of that stuff so that they can like make the slate clean to make room for all of this new stuff that's coming.
I mean,
out.
that is true. I mean, but at the moment, I could still consider that canon.
Sure, and at the moment, I can still consider the first Star Wars Zombies novel canon because nothing's refuting it technically.
Yeah.
But if we're taking it wholesale like they've
Sure.
said they're doing, we have
Okay.
to assume that it's all thrown out.
Right. But
Except
if-
where certain elements are being reintroduced back into through the shows.
But it does sound like they're adding more peripheral elements rather than large chunks of story from the expanded universe.
Sure. Yes,
Yeah, okay.
it's
all
true.
right, that's fine. Yeah. So, but in order to having eliminated that, what I was trying to say is now we're filling it up with new expanded universe content that's its own thing that is canon.
Yes.
Since everything's under the Disney banner, it's become a lot simpler. And of course,
The
Disney,
mouse is my master now.
since Disney also owns Marvel, it just adds up, right?
Yeah,
Star
sure.
Wars goes to Marvel, and that's
Well,
what we're
back to Marvel.
goes back to Marvel. That's an interesting thing because everybody goes, "No, Star Wars was Dark Horse." It's like, yes, for a long time it was, but before that, it was Marvel.
Unfortunately.
When Marvel took a real chance though, because they got the rights to this movie when it was a little sci-fi film that was shooting in Tunisia that nobody knew anything about, and
That
they were
is
like,
true, yeah.
"Do you want the comic book rights to this?" They're like, I guess, like, we'll take it. And then they made a ton of money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So much money. Stupid amounts of money. The only way to describe it is Star Wars money.
George Lucas money.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But now it's back, and boy, did Marvel go all out on these.
Oh, yeah.
Throwing a lot of their top talent at Star Wars.
Now, that's actually I'm a little curious about is,
Mm-hmm.
and something we probably won't have the answer to right away, is did the Marvel, like, hook their top talent into these Marvel books, or did their top talent go, we have Star Wars, let me write Star Wars?
Yeah.
I'm guessing probably elements of both
Yeah.
would be my guess. Because, yeah, I'm sure everybody was jumping at the chance to write Star Wars books.
Because, I mean, based on the
You're gonna-
amount of stuff he's been putting out within the Star Wars canon, I would say that Greg Rucka probably leapt at the chance to write Star Wars.
Does seem like
Because
that.
he's put out not only one of the comics, he's also done quite a few of the, like, YA novellas that have come out as well.
And he seems to have focused specifically on things connected to Force Awakens. I mean, ignoring like his Han Solo novel. Even that was technically part of Journey to Force Awakens,
Yeah.
but whatever. It took place. Did that take place between the? Did that take place in this same, or was that before New Hope?
I believe that was before. I'd have to go back and reread it. I read a lot of Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, I think that's. But anyway, aside from that, he did Shattered Empire, which was the conceivably the direct prequel to Force Awakens.
We'll get into that.
It's
Yeah.
part of the journey to Force Awakens
Sure,
once again.
sure.
But it's the first. It was the first thing that took place after Jedi
Yes.
of the new official canon stuff. And then he also wrote the prequel novel for the new like triumvirate of heroes.
Yes.
Was that Before the Awakening? I think it's called.
I believe so. It's basically just 3 short stories that focuses on Finn, Rey, and Poe Dameron.
Yeah. So it
I
does
wonder
seem,
what his conversations are like. Does he get to sit down with like
well, that's what I'm
the
saying. He
heads
seems
of
to be the one
Marvel and Disney? And
who's more involved in like it from the movie side, specifically connecting to the movies. The stuff Jason Aaron and Kieran Gillen are doing are connected to the original movies much more than the new stuff.
Well, I would imagine that when you have a writer like Greg Rucka, who's, made so many amazing graphic novels and stories, if he's that close in, they kind of go, all right, here's some of the things we want you to touch on, and then go have fun with it. I feel like they obviously feel comfortable with him writing some of these stories connected to the Force
Yeah.
Awakens.
I do know. I have a friend who knows Greg Rucka, and talked about that. Like Rucka got the script well before they shot the movie, so that he could start outlining the prequel sort of stories to Force Awakens. So like
There may be stuff in these books that
was
connect to the Force Awakens stuff that we don't even know about yet.
yeah. So he was involved like right at the beginning of development of the movies, and like you were going to be the guy who's going to handle the stuff that directly ties into this.
Cool.
So he's in on the inner circle of Star Wars creative personnel here. And that may not be the case for these other
Sure, yeah.
Marvel writers.
He's kind of the Brian Bendis of the Star Wars comic books right now, or Star Wars content outside the movies.
Yeah,
Like, there's a while that Bendis was writing how many Marvel titles all at the same
yeah,
time?
it seemed like
and
all
kind
of
of
them.
orchestrating these big events of like, okay, this guy's going to do this and cross over here.
Much like Jeff Johns is at DC
Exactly.
now. Yeah. It seems like that's sort of the new like mandate or the new operating procedure in comics is there's a central guy or a couple of guys.
Well, it's
who
good to
are-
have a guiding vision to these things.
I
so
mean,
you're
if
not
everything's
just
gonna
approaching
be-
it like scattershot.
if everything's going to be so interconnected as everybody wants everything to be, it makes sense to have somebody at the top of that or at the center of that
Coordinating
going,
at the very
yeah,
least.
let's make sure this all makes sense. And we'll see what happens come Rebirth over at DC.
Whatever the hell that is.
I don't know. We're getting little pieces of it, but they're
What little
relaunching
pieces?
somehow about Rebirth.
Yeah.
Here we go. But we know that they're juggling all the creative people. We know everything's going back to number one, from what I gather.
Right.
But
Okay.
whether or not it's a hard reboot, all the New 52, or whether or not they're doing more like what Marvel just did with Secret Wars and sort of like cleaning it up a bit and going back to number one after sort of juggling everybody around.
Don't know. Don't care. DC.
All right.
Well, Gorgoni's out of this conversation for a second, but the three of us care.
Is Batman still going? Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, Batman will still be going. Detective Comics will still be going. I know that they're canceling Superman Batman in favor of a Trinity book,
Oh, interesting.
which makes sense given that there's a movie coming out that's
Yeah,
basically a Trinity
and I like
movie.
the Trinity stuff. That hasn't
Yeah.
happened for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. They're canceling a number of.
They
I think they're
canceled
canceling Teen Titans.
Batman 66, which just drives me
They
crazy.
did cancel Batman 66.
I just can't even believe that.
That's
For no
good.
other reason than to kill fun.
That's exactly what they did.
And on that day, fun died. Yeah. So, as goes Batman 66, so goes fun. I certainly stand by that. But yeah, anyway, so the Star Wars, though, it's interesting looking at these books. The first thing, particularly as they go forward, we're only, once again, as a preface, we're only talking about the first collected volume of Star Wars, Darth Vader, and then the miniseries Princess Leia and Shattered Empire. So that of course leaves out the second volumes that have come out of Star Wars and Vader and the Lando miniseries.
Right.
We may talk about those at some point, but right now we're specifically focusing on basically everything that came out up to The Force Awakens.
Right.
Just as a preface, so that once again we don't get any "why not Lando?" Look, I love Lando.
Lando will get his day.
Yeah, Lando will get his.
And I'll say this as a quick aside, having read the Lando book, it is good.
He's Lando.
Yeah.
And you're going to be getting Billy D. Williams to come on for that?
That's right.
Is
Yes,
that what-
absolutely.
Is that what I heard?
Billy
That-
D. Williams and you, Ian, because you're the Star Wars aficionado. Gorgoni, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to. We only have 4 mics.
Yeah.
I'm going to go cry in the corner now.
He was the baddest dude in a galaxy far, far away.
Look, he
That's-
rocked a cape.
Yeah.
and
What
he's
was,
great
what was
in
the
these
show
books.
that he was on where someone wanted to call him Billy D and he said, no, call me Lando? There was some show where he was a
Oh
guest
no,
star.
it's the other way around. It's on Scrubs, and Billy D. Williams is the like uncle or godparent of somebody in the hospital.
That's
and
right.
Turk wants to calls him Lando. He's like, call me Billy D.
Yes.
He's like, Lando, Lando. Yeah.
An interesting story. I saw Billy D. Williams once at a comic convention. Mm-hmm. Very sad. This is kind of a sad story.
Oh, no.
I walked by and I thought, "There's Billy D. Williams' table," and I looked. There was no one in line to see him. There was no one. It was just Billy D. Williams alone at his table, asleep.
Oh. But that,
Like
no, that's
sitting
I,
up asleep.
Yeah, he was sitting in the chair, had his head down, asleep, and I'm just
I
like,
choose to interpret that as an adorable story about Lando taking a nap.
But it was just like, there's Lando Calrissian, and he's your grandfather now. Like he fell asleep in the middle of a convention. You look over at Stan Lee's table; he's also asleep. He's like, oh man, all my heroes are
The
old.
geriatric
But
wing.
then you
of-
look over at William Shatner's table, and he's like standing on the table yelling about something.
It's
and you're
amazing
just
what
like-
a little
you're
bit of
like,
cocaine will do.
I did see his panel. He was quite energetic and was frequently rubbing his nose. Shatner's the only guy I've seen do like a panel standing up, basically. He was just no moderator, just like, question, didn't hear it, don't understand. What are you talking about? Not going to talk about Star Trek. Yeah. But hey, he didn't say that, but that'd be amazing if he was like, no Star Trek questions. Everybody leaves the mic.
Yeah.
One guy has
A panel only about Boston.
I was going to say one guy had a TJ Hooker question. But yeah, so that is what we were talking about. We were talking about these books. But what I was going to say is what's interesting, they have definitely taken a Marvel approach to these books in that they are interconnected with one another. This is a shared universe.
I would say especially Star Wars and Vader.
Yeah, because, I mean, the miniseries are sort of their own thing. I mean, you can assume they're all connected, but...
Sure.
And particularly Star Wars and Vader going forward, because I do know that as we head into the next volumes, we eventually do have a crossover event called Vader Down.
I'm super excited to read that.
Which will be coming out later in its own collected form, you know, like its own book.
The second volume of Vader definitely leads straight into Vader Down.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, I need to read this right now. Trying not to break my rule about buying single issues.
I broke that rule, and I've fallen hard into that world.
No, I know.
Donovan
me
and I
too.
both have succumbed to that, and it's bad news.
But that means all of our conversations are, Gorgoni, have you read this? And you're like, wait, 6 months. It's like,
Yeah.
I can't talk about this for 6 months.
yeah, exactly.
And in the meantime, I'm saving myself a lot of money and shelf space.
Shelf space mainly.
I don't know. I don't actually know. I've run the numbers, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
I do.
Okay.
Considering the number of comics I buy,
Mm-hmm.
it would quickly add up to, well, guess I'm eating ramen for the next forever.
I'm just saying, like the combined, like if these issues cost this added together versus the price of the trade.
Sure, but especially Marvel books these days.
Marvel, I don't subscribe to that many Marvel books.
Yeah.
We keep the Marvel books to a minimum for me.
So, but yeah.
Unless you've heard me talk about it on this show, those are the only ones I subscribe to.
In terms of how they tie in, it's certainly interesting to see where they chose to set these books, because it is the big gap of time between the first Star Wars, A New Hope, and Empire Strikes Back.
Which I think was a good choice, because I think that's where you have the most opportunity for story, if you're going to set it during the original trilogy.
It also lets you play on that nostalgia of, oh, we're still in Star Wars.
There's just as I pick up this
Luke is still a baby bird at this point.
if I pick up you look at the cover of this first volume, everybody's in the costumes you want to see them in. These are the classic 70s era Star Wars outfits.
Ian, how much would you spend on that yellow jacket that Luke's wearing?
Oh, more money than I have right now.
Yeah.
That is a fact.
I could get Chewie's messenger bag. I know those exist.
I was going to say, Luke's jacket I've seen out there around,
yeah.
Ooh.
I almost bought Han Solo's jacket from Empire a couple weeks ago.
That's the Hoth one?
Yeah.
That's the coolest jacket
Yeah.
ever. We live in a climate where we could use that.
Well, I feel like this is one of Luke's best outfits in the entire
Oh,
trilogy,
yeah.
and he wears
Unquestionable.
it at the end of the movie, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Well,
that
he
they
wears it
didn't
in
bring
this
back.
comic. That's where you get...
Yeah, you
Right?
do. You really get. I mean, yeah, you get. And it's cool to see. Just to see. I mean, as we sort of jump into Star Wars.
Jason Aaron's and John Cassaday's Star Wars.
Yeah,
Amazing.
which is sort of
Yeah.
your flagship book, which makes
I would
sense.
say,
I mean,
yeah.
it is the one branded Star Wars. No, nothing else attached to it.
Adjectiveless Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the amazing Star Wars or the uncanny Star Wars.
How could Marvel
Spectacular
resist
Star
the
Soon,
spectacular
ultimate Star Wars. Is
Yeah,
There you
exactly.
go.
All new Star Wars.
Yeah, they'll screw this up just like they did their own universe. It's only a matter of time. Give them a few years, and,
Right.
and you're going to start
Your
getting into
friendly neighborhood Star Wars.
alternate universe Han Solo and stuff. I mean, it's going to get bad, but it's just a matter of time. But specifically in this book, you do get to see. I mean, it's interesting. You get to see Luke take the steps towards from where he is in New Hope to Empire. I mean, he's come a ways by the time we see him in Empire. So we get to see a little bit rawer, new Luke Skywalker. Without a mentor figure.
He's baby bird Luke.
He's really trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that we get kind of that cocky, hey, I just blew up the Death Star Luke, and
Definitely.
then trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I fit back into this
Right, I mean,
rebel alliance?
The most lost he is probably in the whole franchise would be between this time, because he doesn't, he's lost Obi-Wan. He has yet to meet Yoda.
Yep.
So you've got a Luke who's like, I don't know where to turn. I know that I have this ability, and at this point he's tapped into the Force and such, but he's got no one to guide him.
Right. He's still rocking the flailing wombat style of lightsaber combat.
Exactly, yeah, which is cool to see. And we also just have, I think, number one, Star Wars is my favorite book of the bunch. Now, that may just have to do with the fact that Han Solo, this is the only one Han Solo is really in. Mm-hmm. But specifically, Jason Aaron's ability to capture the voices of these characters. I talked about this because this is one of my top 5 books of the year.
Yeah.
But he perfectly captures these characters.
He does.
And maybe none better than the Han and Leia dynamic specifically in this book.
I don't know. I think he pretty much nails Chewie as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chewie's there for sure. But you not only have, I mean, you have the most. I mean, Cassaday's art is the most photorealistic. Like these are the actors' faces.
Yeah.
Of any of them, because in the other books you kind of get. Well, I mean, like in Vader, you get a lot of people who have masks and stuff. So
it's
like,
tough to screw up Vader. I feel.
Yeah,
like.
because
or Boba Fett.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You get more of those kind of characters. I mean, you get the Emperor and stuff in there, but and even that's like once again a very disfigured. You get more comic book kind of designs of characters in Vader because you have the characters that lend themselves to that more.
Right.
But in this book specifically, this is the one that really to me feels like we are trying to be that missing movie that wasn't made. Mm-hmm. And I think Jason Aaron really crushes it on the writing here.
Oh yeah, totally. I feel like were this just presented as the sequel to the original Star Wars, it would have fit right in.
I feel like almost more so than any of the other Star Wars comics I've read. I mean, I've read I've read a lot of the Dark Horse stuff, and there was good stuff in there. But this one, more than anything, really feels like, oh wow, okay, yeah, this feels like it belongs with the movies.
Right. Like there are some logical things that happening in this book that seeing them in context between A New Hope and Empire make you go like, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the only other thing that I would compare this to, excuse me, would be like the Thrawn trilogy. That for me was like the only other book or novel that came out that ever seemed like, oh yeah, I can see.
Oh, they're
all
bringing
of
Thrawn
this.
back in Rebels. I'm so excited.
Are they?
Yeah,
They're
That's
seamless.
amazing.
The Thrawn trilogy is seamless after Star Wars.
I mean, yeah, because for the longest time, we never thought we were getting anything past Jedi. So I always, to me, it was always, Thrawn was okay. That's where that story went, and that adds up. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that it doesn't anymore, but it did at one time. And yeah, I agree that one was one of the, because I never got that into the expanded universe, but I got into that because that one really did feel like. And I feel like the fan embracing of it more so, because everything else was kind of like, I like this book, but not that book. But everyone kind of agreed on Thrawn. I felt like it had its supporters.
A lot of people were in on like the New Jedi Order stuff and like the stuff that happened after that, like that, because there was a main line of Star Wars books that was happening for years, and the Thrawn trilogy certainly kicked that off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of the reason that we like the Thrawn trilogy and why we like this Star Wars reboot and everything is because it plays with the characters that we know and love. I mean, like when you were talking about the relationship between Leia and Han, I would compare this relationship in here to like the relationship they have in Empire Strikes Back, which is like the best Leia Han stuff there is.
Oh yeah, because there's you get like this tension between them in the first Star Wars. Like, okay, there's like a spark of something, but
I think that's a little bit people reading into it like after the fact.
Well, I also think that it's just I think those two actors had chemistry as one, because I think I've said this before. I don't know if I've said it before on the show, but there was something in that movie that led them to decide to write Empire the way it was. So clearly, like Lawrence Kasdan saw something there.
No, that's true.
Matchmaker. Lawrence Kasdan off to the side, like, wait a second.
But yeah, it is interesting to see that because Empire also really alludes to that they've been doing this dance with each other for a while.
Star Wars version of Fiddler on the Roof.
I have the script.
Donovan completed this years ago.
Like everyone in Jedi robes doing tradition.
That's right. I mean, okay, we're going to go into Fiddler on the Roof for just a second. The whole idea that they open with tradition, right? This big, huge thing, and then what they do the rest of the movie is just crumble that. Same thing with the Jedi Order.
Oh, no, it's totally.
Right?
And you just keep the character as Laser Wolf exactly as he is.
Yep.
Name and everything.
Laser Wolf.
Fits in perfectly.
Yep.
I'm glad we took the time to go through that. That's good.
For all you Fiddler on the Roof fans out there.
Yeah. But
No, John, going back to what you said, I completely agree that what we see even in like the first 15 minutes of Empire Strikes Back, where the fighting between Han and Leia, it's like they've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
And it seems like we get this idea that Han Solo has kind of just been used a little bit by the Rebel Alliance to kind of, hey, we need your help on this. We'll pay you, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of feels used and is finally like, I'm out of here. And I think that that's some of the stuff that we see in Star Wars, the comic book, is like, okay, how is he fitting into this Rebel Alliance? Because he obviously still wants to get out, but there's something in here keeping him. Yeah, he's interested at this point.
Well, yeah, and I think that was. I mean, I've gotten in arguments about why he came back at the end of Star Wars and such, and it's just like I think Leia might have had something to do with that. I mean, that's reading into it from Empire, but hey, why not? If they're all connected, then I can do that. Damn it!
Sure.
There was 3 years you couldn't have done that.
Yeah, exactly. The only
And
time.
after Empire came out, you can do that.
Well, no, I think the answers are all there in the holiday special,
Let us not speak of that.
which is technically canon, right?
No.
What? I know that I've heard several arguments that that's technically
Then
canon.
those people are wrong.
What
Because-
about the 2 Ewok made for TV movies?
Definitely not. What? No.
You're telling me that Wilford Brimley is not in canon in Star Wars?
Nope.
That mustache belongs in a galaxy far, far away.
I'm just saying, do you ever see Luke Skywalker with that much mascara on in any other time in the Star Wars trilogy? I think not.
Yeah, what was up with Mark Hamill? In that he looks
Do not
terrifying.
know.
Looks more like Dorothy Hamill.
Yeah, he pulls off a beautiful triple axel. At the end of that.
But yeah, we also have one of the things I like about this book is it has a very like we're on a mission vibe in here
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
as a comic book you don't have to have the same sort of 3-act structure of a movie where you're going, so you can take it more episodically. And so I like this, like we start with them in almost like an espionage kind of scenario. Very like almost James Bondian, where like we have to infiltrate a base and get to this thing.
And that was one of the best parts, that they show up and Han Solo doesn't even put on a guise or anything. He's just like, "Yep, I'm Han Solo." Like, okay,
Because he has this persona as kind of a scumbag, so he can get around in these.
He fits in any scenario because of that. They don't have to try to put on some.
Well, this whole idea that he's the official emissary of his high excellentness, exaltedness, the illustrious Jabba the Great, mightiest of the All Hutts, master of Tatooine, and grand warlord of the Outer Rim.
Yeah, it's true.
But you can call me Han. And he shows up, and he's just like, yeah, it's awesome. We get to see. But the other thing that's interesting about this book is, I like when Vader shows up later, and it's like, oh shit, Darth Vader's here. Like that's a big deal,
No, I mean, anytime Vader can just stride in and start wrecking crap is.
But this will get into an argument that will continue throughout this episode, I think.
Yeah.
Vader, to me, is at his best when he's kept at a distance like that. I like Vader as a omnipresent threat that can show up at any moment.
Sure.
There's another book we have here called Darth Vader
Right.
that makes him the main character.
But he's still the threat.
Yes.
Like, we're following
Well-
him from an anti-hero point of view.
Yes. No, I'm not saying they're trying to make me sympathize. Well, they kind of are, but I'm not saying that they're humanizing Vader. But there's so much time with him, and we'll get into that. But anyway,
Why not now?
okay, let's do it now.
Because
I don't think that I think he's maybe the main character in the first 2 or 3 issues, but I think that once, Dr. What's her name?
Starts with an ACH.
But
That
once
was a lot. He was not with an A-C-H.
I'm pretty sure it's ACH.
But once the
Yeah.
doctor shows up, once he finds a doctor and
Yeah.
and takes her under his wing essentially to use her for her robotics and everything, I feel like she then becomes the main character. I think
mean
part
evil-
of that,
Afra.
Because
Afra?
Dr. Afra, and I think part of that though is
APH.
because Vader rarely speaks, especially
he really can't be the main character of something to a certain
Exactly.
extent.
I think that if he was the main character, we'd get tired of him just going in and destroying everything, because that's really
Right.
that was his journey. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm just going to go in and destroy everything until I'm on top.
And because his story is so the spine of the Star Wars story, really, this descent into this, you can't deviate much. I mean, you can't have him do a ton because he really is on a path to a destiny. I mean, everybody is, like Luke. Both him and Luke are kind of in that sense.
Right.
Han and Leia, you can screw around with
You
a little
got
bit
some more
more
wiggle room.
because they're not as like, it's not as clear where they were from place to place. Like you can only have Luke get so far in his Jedi training,
Sure.
because he has to get to Empire. But Han and Leia can kind of do anything as long as they don't die.
Right.
Yeah.
And once again, building that relationship. Like that's all we know coming into this is like they have a history with one another, and
But-
they've been working for the rebels.
Something that both of these books do is they recontextualize Vader in a way that I really, really like. And that's him finding out that Luke is his son.
Yeah,
And that the Emperor would replace him if he had the chance.
yeah.
And that to me helps so much with watching Empire, when at the end Vader's going, join me and we'll rule the Empire. Like, getting to see kind of this, the Emperor is kind of backstabbing me, so I'm going to go ahead and try to backstab him and try to...
It is something I do like in the Star Wars movies, is this idea that like, yeah, they both kind of want to kill each other. But I don't know. It's just for me.
Well, the apprentice must kill the master. It is the way of the Sith.
Just like, why would you join up with the Sith then? That's horrible.
Or why would you be a Sith master?
Well, but it seems like if you join up with the Sith, you're going to start as an apprentice, work your way to master, and then somebody's going to bump me off. I don't care for
Look,
this.
the mistake is just taking on an apprentice. You hit a master and he's like, retire.
But I don't know. Like
One of the things that I do like that you were saying, John, is that you kind of like him as this omnipresent, like shows up at any point.
Yeah.
Sometimes one of the things that I do really love about Darth Vader is you actually get to see inside of his head sometimes. And one of my favorite scenes is when Dr. Anara was saying Afra, excuse me. When Dr. Afra was saying, like, how did you find me? Oh, I'm sure I don't want to hear about it. And you get this no speaking at all, just this montage of everybody that Darth Vader has killed to get to this point, like just throwing people out a window. That was one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
You get a glimpse in his head for 2 seconds, and then he's back to being this.
I don't. I mean,
mask.
yeah, I don't want it coming off as like, boy, I hate everything that happens in this book, and there's stuff I like in here, but overall, I'm not interested in the dark side particularly, or at least not this guy.
But see, that's what I like about the Vader book in particular, is that it's not necessarily about the like come to the dark side sort of thing. It's like
we're already on the dark side,
right? That's the thing, and exploring aspects within that, like how do they work within those waters? Following Vader as he's recruiting this kind of team to help him take down the Emperor in a way. It's very Ocean's 11-y, and especially in the second volume, there's actually a heist where he's like using this team to steal from the Empire. So that he can kind of build up his own like personal cache of resources so that he might one day have a chance of taking down the Emperor. And especially the recontextualization of him finding out in both the Star Wars book and the Darth Vader book that Luke is his son during this time.
Yeah.
I feel it really adds weight to the scenes later in Empire where he's just like, but if he could be turned, like him kind of playing dumb to a certain extent around the Emperor so that he doesn't tilt his own hand. I think it gives more of like Vader as a credible threat, not just a dog on a leash.
Well, you see him do that a couple times in this, where the Emperor asks him something, and you see what he thinks, and then he gives a completely different answer. Right, like at the very end when he's like, put it together who Luke is, and he's like, there's no problem, we're okay, everything's fine.
And I think that's one of my favorite relationships in this, that we get to see the Emperor and the relationship with Darth Vader.
Yeah.
That's something that we, in Empire, we get to see the big frog eyes guy for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, well, in the original version, yeah.
And then in Jedi, like
The
we
only
see him a little bit, but we really don't get to see that relationship. When that was
it's true.
When Palpatine was such a huge part of the Anakin Skywalker stuff that we saw, and then he kind of just disappears for a while.
Yeah, it's true. And you like, well, and that's what's interesting. Another interesting thing is that Vader's really the only one that brings in the prequels,
Right.
like big time, quite heavy.
And in a good way, though. I didn't feel that.
I mean, in as much as it's fine, but like, they still saw a drawing of Hayden Christensen, which was like,
Okay, that took me out of it for a second.
because something I think I was saying, I don't think I've said before to people, is I don't ever think of the man under that mask as Hayden Christensen.
I think of him as the Clone Wars Anakin.
I mean, I don't necessarily think of that. I have a real hard time actually
I think as, like,
putting it beyond just the intellectual knowledge that's Anakin Skywalker under there. Associating any version I've seen with being in that suit.
I get Ivan Ooze Vader.
I
mean, that's the. I think I think of that
yeah.
of that like broken old man at the end of Jedi.
I think
Because
of
that
James
who's-
Earl Jones.
That's
Like,
who's
that's
in
who
the
I
Vader
want.
costume,
When
though,
Yeah.
is the broken
You
old
want
man.
But
it to be
it's
his
hard for me
head.
to
When the
once
mask
again to
comes off.
extrapolate that.
Man. And
That's who I want to see. Is when the mask comes
Well,
off.
it's
I want to
true.
see
We
James
don't
Earl
The man who
Jones.
plays Darth Vader to me is James Earl Jones.
what we don't get is after Jedi, right? And then he's able to retire. He's gone blind, unfortunately. And kids knock a baseball into his backyard.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then they later
Yep.
knock on his back door.
Oh
Right?
no!
So when does Vader get a really big dog?
Well, not to mention that was only the
Hercules.
second time that he had to deal with baseball, because the first time some guy said, "I've got this cornfield,
Yep.
and you need to come because these baseball players."
That's when he
who-
still could see. He wasn't
Yeah,
blind at
that's
that
right.
point.
That was
yeah.
That's when he got
bit
into his
in-between.
baseball
I'm
career.
sorry. Thank you. My order of operations is mixed up there a little bit.
Oh my God! Every movie's connected, right?
Wait,
Yeah.
but
My original Star
hold on,
Wars trilogy
pause.
is actually 5
At
movies.
that point, James Earl Jones goes into the cornfield and then like just disappears. So that's when he goes into the Force, and then we see him.
Oh,
He was a Force ghost the whole time. The Sandlot can really be seen as a Sixth Sense-like movie. Where James Earl Jones has been dead this
all
whole
those kids
time.
are dead people.
Benny the Jet and Smalls are the only two
Smalls
people who
kinda-
actually see him.
Smalls kind of looks like Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense. Oh my gosh, this all makes sense.
And if that dog is Cujo,
Now, something else we do see, which we mentioned a little bit in these books, is Boba Fett.
yes.
Obviously,
Which I actually like him in this.
I do
Yeah,
too.
to
I'm
be
not. I'm not a Boba Fett. I mean, I think Boba Fett's fine, but I'm not like a Boba Fett fan. Like a lot. I mean, you are, Gorgoni, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
like I mean, like a lot of Star Wars fans really embrace this character, and I don't dislike him by any means, but yeah, I like him in his place, and I
Question-
think this is a really good use of him, though.
Question for you, Gorgoni. In Vader, we see Boba Fett, and then he has his own kind of Wookiee sidekick, or at least somebody else who he works along with.
Black something. Black.
Is this a character that's been talked about? In any, I mean, like,
No.
I didn't know if this was part of something that they're pulling in. Or
Not as far as I read, because again, my reading in the expanded universe is extensive. I'm not going to claim I've read everything. I've read most things.
I was going to say you've read far more than any other person I've personally
and I
met.
have read quite a bit of the Boba Fett expanded
Right.
universe stuff, like the whole. A lot of stuff to do with like his connections to Mandalore, a lot of his connections to the old Bounty Hunters Guild and the Old Republic, but neither here nor there.
But what do you think
But
of
that
the?
Wookiee is not mentioned.
What do you think of the portrayal of him in these books?
I think he's fine. I mean, he's used as a precise link in like he's the one who finds out who Skywalker is.
Yeah.
He's the one who finds out.
I love that scene in the cantina when he's just tearing things apart.
Yeah,
And he's like, "Who's going to fight me?" And it's the biggest guy. And he's like,
Well,
"Good."
It's that, but once again, because
they're
they're contextualizing him in the way that I see him in the movies, less so than he became not a different character in like the expanded universe to me, but like far more rounded and I mean, which
sure,
is fine.
but that
he-
happens when you explore any character.
It's true, but I like him on the side of this where he's like this, like he's like a force that's pursuing our characters. You know,
Sure.
I mean that, and then further adds to the weight he has in Empire when he shows up. When you're
No
like, oh,
disintegration.
I saw him. Yeah, I miss his old voice.
well, and one of the things
Speaking
that
of
I do
changes
like
to
about
special
this,
edition.
though, is that we see him fail at least once to Darth Vader, and that to me makes sense then why Darth Vader in Empire would hire all of the bounty hunters. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily trust just you, so I need to hire all of these guys.
I need
make
to hire
this.
Bosk. I need to
Exactly.
hire Zuckuss. I need
to-
Forlom. I need IG-88. I need Dengar.
It's choosing like a basketball team in a gym class.
the dream team.
I'll take Bosk.
Look, he's got reach.
Yeah.
See those arms?
Pretty big.
He's putting together. Yeah, this is what I need. I'm gonna need a droid. Let's see. Yeah,
Well, there were two droids.
were there two droids?
IG-88 and Forlom, yes.
Forlom.
Who's the one in the yellow jumpsuit?
That's Dengar with the head wrapping.
I would also get that yellow jumpsuit.
The Dengar
Yeah.
yellow jumpsuit.
If I had an opportunity, I'd get that jumpsuit. Just in case you're wondering.
Fair enough. Yeah, not enough Dengar in these new comics.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
We
He's
gotta
all over some of the older Boba Fett
we gotta
books,
call
actually.
Jason Aaron. Hey, what's going on?
and an interesting thing I wonder too about these as I'm reading is like going forward in these books. Almost my question is almost like how long can they run with this stuff? How much
Well,
material?
we hit Empire at a certain point.
But
Yeah.
I'm saying like how much material can they get away with before you're like, all right, that's a lot to have happened between these things and like why? And the other thing, I mean, I think the potential danger of these books is like. If you have anything too big happen, then it's like, why aren't they talking about that in Empire?
Yeah. I don't know. That's always been a contentious argument between both you and I and like me and a couple of other friends in terms of just like, okay, Rebels is the perfect example of this.
Yep.
Where you have these characters at least two characters in the show are ostensibly Jedi. We can get into like nitpicky arguments about how like they're not fully trained. They're like the adult one who's running around never got past being a Padawan before all the other Jedi got butchered.
Yes.
But ostensibly they're running around with lightsabers. So like, why do we not see or hear of these characters in the movies?
Makes sense. That's a valid
Sure.
question.
We can only assume that because these shows are set like 5 years before A New Hope that it doesn't end well for any of these characters.
Except it's a kid's show, and it probably will.
I don't know. Because
Vaguely.
Sure, it's
I mean,
a kid's
it will
show.
end vaguely well, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
It might end ambiguous. It might end not good.
I'm pretty certain this
They're not all gonna be
season of
slaughtered.
Rebels is going to end with Vader killing Ahsoka. But that's just me.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Actually, I won't see, but you can tell me.
Yeah.
But here's like an interesting thing. As I'm flipping through here, I'm looking at Luke fighting Darth Vader with his lightsaber,
Well, fighting, I think, is a generous
attempting
term.
to fight. I mean, that they are
A fight implies two participants.
They are
Luke, at best, is like...
They're confronting one another with lightsabers,
Fair
correct? Now, I have no problem with this. However, if this comic continues and they fight, quote unquote, 4 to 5 more times, does that lessen the impact of them fighting in Empire?
I would say yes. I feel like they started out big in this one. They
Yeah.
started out really big in this book.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying like, I'm not like these books are going to start being crap at a certain point.
Right.
But I'm just saying like it's an interesting question to raise. You are purposely setting a story between two big stories,
Sure.
and then how big can that story in between be before you're like, why wasn't this covered?
Do we know how... Are either of the books, either Star Wars or Vader, continuing after Vader Down?
Yeah,
Okay.
they already have.
All right.
It doesn't lessen it because you've got all the Yoda training.
Yeah,
in
but I mean,
Empire.
like, but I don't
So
get
when they fight, he's already got that.
in Empire. I don't get the sense that
This
these
is
are
the
these
final
are
culmination of years of battle.
right. I don't get the
two.
sense like yet we meet again after our last fight, which was 6 months ago.
Right.
It's not like the 8th of our confrontations. I get the sense that they haven't really confronted one another too much in the time between.
I don't foresee them confronting each other anymore after this. Now that Darth Vader knows that that's his son.
Right.
I think he's kind of waiting to see how things shake out.
Yeah, and especially with that information. Exactly.
Like, because then if they had fought again, then why didn't all of this stuff in Empire just happen when they fought the second?
Yeah,
that's
Precisely.
So I don't. They might be close to each other, but I don't foresee it
And
turning
again,
into this one-on-one battle again.
In this Star Wars book, I feel like they started out really big to get people hooked because, like, they
Yeah.
start with big mission to a planet where they're blowing up shipyard. Vader's there. Han Solo's driving an AT-AT and stomping on stormtroopers.
I'm glad you brought that up. My absolute favorite part
like
of this comic.
so much crazy.
My absolute
You don't
favorite
like
part
when
of this comic is Han Solo driving an AT-AT
You don't
Walker.
like when his wife shows up?
That's fine.
Okay. Fine.
Look, actually,
That was great.
hold on to that because I want to talk about that specifically.
fair enough.
But yeah, I just want to bring up how awesome Han driving an AT-AT
So, like, I
is.
feel like this series started out big
and trying to step on
bombastic
Darth Vader
and
with it.
huge to get people like, oh,
Yes.
this is Star Wars
Yep.
back in it. And now we can really start.
I will
going
say-
forward, we can start digging in more.
Well,
into,
here's an interesting thing. You've read Volume 2 of Vader. Well, I don't want to get into these because not everybody has. I've read Volume 2 of Star Wars.
okay.
We go back in
Interesting.
Star Wars. We go back.
'Cause I know
we go
start
back to
doing
Ben Kenobi.
Obi-Wan stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Because that's what I really want
So
to
that
see.
means
Yes.
that's a whole other realm that they
There's
haven't
20
explored.
years of Obi-Wan being a desert like hermit.
Well, that's actually a question I have. Is I know they're doing. I know that they're doing an Obi-Wan book, but it's not the Obi-Wan book I want to see.
Well, it's Obi-Wan and Anakin. Yeah.
Yeah, which I'm saying is, it's interesting that there's so much time there.
Well, I feel like they're starting to cover that in the Star Wars.
I know, and that's what's interesting is becoming that. So I mean, then you also get into this thing about what is the Star Wars book?
I guess
Does it
can be anything? Kind of.
Does it have to be this story that's set between?
Apparently not.
No, I know it's an interesting thing. As I would pick that up, and it's like, wait, we're going back to Obi-Wan on Tatooine. Interesting.
Do you, not to get into the Obi-Wan and Anakin too much, but do you feel that story at all is from a perspective of Obi-Wan, kind of looking back on it? Like, does it feel like that at all, or does it just
doesn't.
feel like we are just in this?
And
at
I've
this
only
point
only
in
read
time?
issue 1 of that, so I can't get into that. I can't get into that too much because I don't know. But no, it doesn't have that feeling. It just that feels much like Leia and some of the other very ancillary.
Got it.
Here's a fun story from the past.
Because I will say this: there is a trade we're not talking about today that has come out in the stock of Marvel Star Wars, and that is the one that ties in directly with Rebels.
The
Kanan, the last Padawan.
Have you read that?
No, I have not. I was planning on picking it up soon, though.
Okay.
Because I know the second. Because that only actually ran for about 12 issues. And the second trade just came out, I want to say.
Is the Kanan book over?
Yes, I believe so.
I didn't know it was over. Oh, interesting.
Well, it only goes up to a certain point because we start in, like, right as Order 66 is happening.
Yeah.
And then we have, like, a 15-year gap, and then Rebels is happening, and we have a book that covers some of that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first
I knew there were some
Expanded
books.
Universe books.
Mm-hmm. There are some novels. I don't know how many of the novels have you read of the new stuff.
Let's see.
Did you read Aftermath? Yeah, I didn't hear. I didn't hear great things about
Did you
Aftermath.
read Tarkin?
I read Tarkin. I read Aftermath.
Tarkin looked cool. That
I've
one.
read. Is it called Lost Stars?
Yes,
I've
heard good things. Yeah.
I've read most of the YA ones. I haven't read the direct prequel to Force Awakens yet.
Yeah, I think it's before the Awakening. I want to say
Right.
still.
And there are one or two other ones. The one that I love the most, actually, and one that you probably wouldn't enjoy at all, John, based on your opinions of Vader, is a one that's literally just like a buddy road picture between Vader and Palpatine as they're trapped on a planet and have to, like, fight their way out.
Yeah, that holds zero interest. I'm just not.
Because, again, it's an expansion on, like, the relationship between Vader and Palpatine that I
Yeah.
find so interesting.
I know. It's just I don't find those characters that interesting, and that's the end of the day. Like, I'm just not fascinated by them
Sure.
particularly. And you know, other than to me, they're bad guys, and that's fine. So
Yeah,
I like
and
them when
I'm
they threaten the
fascinated by,
characters I like.
A evil space wizard who has, like, used bureaucracy to manipulate his way into control of a galactic empire. I find that awesome.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's fine.
That's all the crap I hated in the prequels.
But I feel like you can have that crap and do a really good job with it, a la, like, Game of Thrones.
This is true.
Like, Game of Thrones in space with laser swords, I'm 100% on board with this.
Yeah.
Like, that can be done well.
But I feel like Star Wars kind of is that as a whole, not just the Palpatine stuff.
Sure, and
that's why I
But I
like
feel
this. That's why I think just the Star Wars book, because there is Vader and Palpatine stuff in here.
yeah.
But it's, once again, like, I like it amongst the other stuff. When you just focus on it, I kind of check out a little bit.
But it's not. But the Vader book specifically doesn't just focus on that, because then we also have a focus on that Dr. Aphra character, who's kind of like a Vader fangirl in a certain way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I find that character really fascinating.
I completely
all
agree
right.
because she's someone who you like and you're rooting for, and at the same time, her goal is to help Darth Vader take over. And so it's kind of this: do I root for them? Do I not root for them? The only thing that I wonder about is Dr. Aphra talks so much, and I just wonder, like, would Darth Vader actually put up with the way that she talks to him?
This is something I kept
They
thinking as I was
definitely
reading
go
it.
into that in the second trade.
Okay, all right.
Like, their relationship, I find really fascinating. The fact that she keeps insisting on wanting to help him out when there's a very good possibility that he will just straight up kill her.
Yeah.
They mention it in the first one. She's like, "When you do, please just like lightsaber me to the neck."
But
Yeah.
here's and need I bring in the Rebels debate again, is what happens to her, and is it as simple as he just kills her? Because that's not a good story.
Right. But it, like,
if it's
at the
like,
end
I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, I killed you.
Did you watch Clone Wars to the end?
I don't think I made it all the way to the end
Okay.
of Clone Wars.
So the big question hanging over
I
Clone
think I got
Wars.
up to that season that's on Netflix, so. And I'll watch the end of it at some point.
But so the big question hanging over Clone Wars for the longest time was it introduced Anakin Skywalker's apprentice, Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And the big question hanging over that show was like, well, then what happens to her?
Yeah.
Like, we don't see her in anything.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, is it as simple as she dies? But there's a more complex answer that show explored, which was I thought it was satisfying. If they had just left it there, I would have been happy with that. They're exploring it deeper in Rebels,
Yeah.
and it may end with her dying.
I was not crazy about the character of Ahsoka in general, but I'm glad that the answer was not as simple as she died, because that is boring.
Right.
Once again, it's just boring. It's like, oh, why wasn't she around? Somebody killed her.
Sure.
I think that how they're going to deal with a lot of this, though, is like for Dr. Aphra, if she never interacts with any of these rebels, like meaning the Rebel Alliance, like
Yeah.
directly, then there's no reason that they would bring him up in any of the movies because we don't get Darth Vader talking
is
about
true.
his backstory in the movies. All
is
we
true.
get is everything from the perspective of Luke Skywalker, from the people that we want.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't.
And seeing how in the comics especially, she's not really interacting with any of, like, the main line of
Right.
the
So far, she
characters.
hasn't even interacted with Palpatine. I mean, she's just
if she
hitting
ever
on
did,
the
she
ship.
would die.
Exactly.
Because she is representing, like, Vader's kind of ace in the hole at this point. She's the person he can use to go around and do sneaky stuff without Palpatine being too suspicious of him.
Right.
I do love the evil C-3PO and R2-D2 on their
that's
side. So
pretty
that
000.
yeah, 000 and BT something.
Yeah.
Me too,
I
what?
am fluent in 6 million forms of communication, politeness, etiquette, and torture.
Yeah.
When he wants to shake her hand, and then she's like, "Override, imprint. We're now your master." He's like, "All right, then don't shake my hand because I'll electrocute you."
And that's where you get into this, like, that's very like Marvel comics. You know what I mean? Like that's something you would never do in a movie. Yeah, I don't think it would work in a movie, but it totally works in a Marvel comic. You know what I mean? Like it
Having
has
a like evil protocol droid.
Yeah, because I feel like people would roll their eyes if that showed up in the middle of episode 8. Like, ugh, an evil C-3PO. Like, but in a comic, let's do it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the fun things that the comics can do is like, let's go down this avenue that we would never touch
Yeah.
in a movie. It's just way too much of a tangent.
Sure.
And I think the comics are doing a good job of that. Where it's like, let's try this. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Sure.
But while still
That's why
being,
we get a Lando comic.
yeah, while still being careful about like,
Ever
okay,
been
but
really
these-
curious about the backstory of Lobot? Read the.
I know that was one of the things I have not read Lando yet, but just flipping through it, how much Lobot appears
Oh,
to be.
he's
in
all
it.
over that.
I know it's like that is interesting. That I would not have guessed if somebody had just told me that there was going to be a Lando comic.
They're best buds.
Oh yeah, I love
Okay,
that.
and then the same thing though is that he actually speaks in the Lando comic. He never speaks in any of the.
No, there's ones where it's translated for him, and then there's another scene where Lando is speaking and Shattered Empire, and Lobot's speaking, but it's not translated. So you get like his alien speech in the text bubble. In case
Wait.
you're wondering,
Are we talking about the same character?
I think so.
Who
Talking
are
about
you talking
Lobot.
about?
The guy with the headphones,
With the like wraparound metal thing on his head.
or I'll
Oh
call him
no,
headphones.
who am I talking about? I'm talking about the guy with the giant ears and the jowls.
That's Nien Yub.
That's who I'm talking
Yeah.
about. I'm sorry.
He is from Sullust. He can't speak basic, so it's not his fault.
That's right. Lobot.
That was
right.
Nien Nub in. Yeah, he's in Force Awakens.
Hell
Yes,
yeah,
he
he is,
is.
and he
Yeah.
survives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, he makes
Had to
it
make
through.
sure my second viewing of just
Yeah.
like make sure he survives
Yeah.
that assault on Star
I just
Killer.
wanted to make sure because it's
That's
never
right.
stated, and it could be a different person from you know how Star Wars is. But that's Admiral Akbar and Nien Nub in that
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
I mean, really, I'm hoping the tangent we truly get in these comics moving forward.
Is a Nien Nub comic? Yeah, me
No.
too. No.
Because we know we're getting a C-3PO one shot to explain why
Yes.
he got his red
Yes.
arm. Because
Yes.
we need that.
One of the things that it does seem like we have to get to these other books, but it does seem like going forward, the answer is, and it should be Force Awakens comics, characters and things
Well,
directed to
they've
them.
got to fill that 30-year gap of just like what was happening
Because
between
what's
Return
the
of the
first?
Jedi. and,
They've
But
now
you could
launched.
do 1,000 years of Maz Kanata.
But they're now launching the
pretty
first,
I would like the Maz Kanata stuff.
the first ongoing series after Force Awakens has been announced, and it's Poe Dameron
yeah.
by popular demand.
Well,
by popular demand.
I mean,
Yes.
if I was to demand anything, though, it would be my comic about my favorite Star Wars character.
Here we go.
No.
Your guys' favorite Star Wars
No.
character.
He
And that's Voberdan.
Oh,
Voberdan.
Voberdan is... He has...
a baboon mechanic.
He's a
Whoa.
stickler for the rules. He is a controller in the base of the Resistance in
Okay.
Force Awakens. He has a line in the movie, and damn it, he's just my favorite character.
John, I don't think I've ever heard you say anything more racist
Than a baboon
He's a baboon mechanic. I'd rather you call me a baboon mechanic than Voberdan one.
Yeah, if you really want to like explore your love of Star Wars, look yourself up some Voberdan. You won't regret it.
Yeah. He's pretty great.
This is what I don't like about Star Wars. The guy has one line in a movie, and people are like, "Well, I need to know everything about him."
And John, he's in 3 scenes.
yeah, there's so many characters who are just around in Star Wars. This is like you can read 7 books about where they came from. I don't want to. I do not care.
I do. Please give me a Voberdan book.
But yeah, no, there's one of the first things I thought coming out of Force Awakens, like, there is so much potential. How are they not doing a giant comic that takes place? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Star Wars switch to...
The big name
Yeah,
out there.
yeah, exactly.
No,
I mean,
definitely.
that would make the most sense
I
to me.
wouldn't be surprised.
Would not be surprised at all.
And if that meant that like this part that we're getting now is just them treading water until they're allowed to do that, how crazy would that be?
Yeah.
Because like if this is treading water, holy crap.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, like,
So much I
they
want
could
to know about
essentially
that.
do Star Wars in 3 parts, where it's after New Hope, and then after Empire,
Mm-hmm.
and then comes back after Return of the Jedi. I
Yeah.
So
they're-
I know John would be disappointed with the after Empire because
Yeah.
that immediately means that
No, Han Solo.
Yeah.
Han Solo is a like fixture on a wall.
We just cut back to him on the wall.
Every once in a while.
There he
Every
is.
couple of issues, just like
Yeah.
him on the wall. Yep,
No,
still
but
there.
what that would be though
Him
is
being a coffee table for a week.
and there's a
It would be
couple-
kind of cool to see, like, the the threads of the plan at the beginning of Jedi come together would be kind of a cool idea.
There are, and I forget what they're called, but there are the now Star Wars Legends. There's a book where it's Leia between the two, and she's like trying to figure out how to
Shadows
track
of the
down.
Empire.
Yeah.
No, there's another one, isn't there?
That's the big one.
That's what I remember.
There's one other one.
There's
Pause.
a lot of other ones.
As-
I'm guessing.
There's just one
Well,
other.
my
one
favorite
other
moments
book.
on the show are when the show just gets quiet as we try to remember the title.
What is? I'm trying to think. Because there's the courtship of Princess Leia, but that's a different one.
Yeah.
But
That's
there's
after.
what is it? Anyways,
It doesn't.
I would totally.
Speaking of Princess Leia,
Yes.
let's turn now to there are two miniseries we said we were going to talk about. There's a lot that goes on in these books, and going forward, I'm sure we'll touch on them
Yeah.
again. But yeah, Star Wars and Darth Vader, they're interconnected, they're ongoing. But we're also talking about two miniseries. One is 5 issues, the other one is 4, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
it's 4.
Okay, so we're talking about Princess Leia and Shattered Empire. Now these we can talk about more separately because they're not the interconnected stories that
Yeah.
Star
Princess
Wars
Leia
is.
book written by Mark Wade.
Yep, with art by Terry Dodson.
Terry and Rachel Dodson, and
Nice.
colors by Jordi Belair, who colors Pretty Deadly, and she colored some Moon Knight stuff, and she's done a lot of awesome color work.
This is one of the most striking books so far.
I think.
yeah.
in the Star Wars Marvel canon.
So I liked Star Wars the best because what it's setting up and what it's doing.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite. I know that sounds weird to say one's the best and one's my favorite, but I just really like the Princess
No,
Leia
you can
book.
separate the two.
Okay, it's just like it's.
You just said
bright,
the one I
it's-
like the best and then my favorite. That was kind of confusing.
That's not confusing at all, John. We're gonna cut it in post. Nobody's gonna hear any of this conversation.
But yeah,
But it's I don't know. It's bright. It's fun. You get to see Princess Leia and like fun, good action stuff that you don't really get a lot of. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff on Endor and
yeah.
and Return of the Jedi, but other than that, you don't really get a lot of that. And it's I don't know. This was
You do get to explore a character who I feel like, at least in the first movie, obviously just doesn't have a ton to do.
No.
What it does, I think, the best is it fills that emotional gap that we kind of have in the Princess Leia character in terms of in A New Hope, she sees her home world blown up.
yeah.
Yeah.
She is forced to watch as her home, all of her family, all of her friends are destroyed.
Yeah.
And seeing as after that, she kind of comes off a little cold, makes you kind of think like, shouldn't she be sad about that sort of thing? And this book does a great job of covering that and like really digging into the Leia character of like how she thinks she has to present herself to the rest of the galaxy.
Yeah.
Well, this one also really kicks. I mean, we kick off at the medal ceremony for the Battle of Yavin.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like this is connected to the first Star Wars movie, and we are starting minutes after
Right.
that movie has ended. Which, you know, as a Star Wars fan, is like, oh wow, we started the medal ceremony. Okay, I'm clicked in immediately to what's going on.
Yeah,
here.
I know where we are.
We see, and then we not only do we see that, we then see the speech she gave right after that, which is like, oh, okay, wow. You get to see her. You get to see sort of all the shades of Leia in this, which I like. You see her as political leader. You see her as like soldier. You know, you see her as this inspiration for the rebel, like the leader of the Rebel Alliance.
You see her as like a figurehead, as someone they're using to present the rebel ideal, basically.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
We can't risk you because you're like you represent something that we can't have otherwise.
Exactly. Which is cool. I mean, this really is the Princess Leia comic that you would want to see in that sense. And yeah, it's awesome. But yes, it is a side adventure. Like,
Yeah,
it
'cause
doesn't have
it focuses
the massive impact
Primarily
of the other
on
ones.
Leia, like going around the galaxy, gathering up all those people who like either moved away from or fled Alderaan.
Alderanian.
Alderans, people of Alderaan.
Yeah.
And gathering them up to be like, we need to take a stand against the Empire because they blew up our home. Even if those people are generations removed from Alderaan, they still have that connection to her home world.
And really claiming her place as somebody to be respected within the, you know, I mean, like, because initially there's some resistance to there are characters who have resistance to her.
Sure.
As this. Because it's just like, whoa, as you
You
might
just represent
expect.
the old nobility.
Yeah, she's a princess, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, of course, there'd be people who would like, oh, we're not, you know, aristocracy and stuff. We don't
Right.
go with that. But then it's like, oh no, wait, she's actually pretty awesome.
And
Which is-
that's one of the things that I really like is that you kind of get to see like how did she become this rebel general that we see nowadays. You know, like
Yeah.
because you don't get to see that in any of the first. You kind of just see like, oh, she's a princess, and then suddenly, oh, now she's some sort of general commander or something.
Because I mean, you
And
talk
Rebel-
about a huge shift in her character when we come into Empire, and she's now barking orders at people, and
Yes.
people are like, "Yes, yes, General," and stuff. And you're like, "Wow, okay." That's
Or
like,
let alone in Return of the Jedi, where she's sneaking into Jabba's palace dressed as a bounty hunter. It's just like, because she's got a thermal detonator!
yeah. Exactly, it's that thing. Or I mean, by the time we see her now in Force Awakens, like this is a hardened
so freaked out by
military
that thermal
woman,
detonator.
you know.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I love that. I mean, throughout this whole book, there's this thing about people want to protect her and stuff, and she doesn't need to be protected. Like,
Yeah.
this is a woman who can handle herself.
That's one of my favorite scenes, though, is just in the first issue when she's escaping from the Rebel Alliance, and they send Luke and Wedge to try to stop her from leaving.
Always more wedge.
And she escapes. And then I just love that Luke kind of just, that smirk that he has, like, nope. There's
You do you, Leia.
Exactly. There's no way we could have stopped her.
Right.
We also get
that's
to
my sister
see
look before he knows. That's
we
my
also get to
sister.
see my man Jimmy Smits again show up in this comic. NYPD Blues Jimmy Smits as what? Do you know his name? Or it's Organa.
Bail? No.
It's Bail Organa, yeah.
Bail
Yeah.
Organa.
And we get some flashbacks to young Leia as well, and see that she always sort of had this like rebellious streak in her.
Feistiness.
Yeah, she was not a woman to be trifled with. She's supposed to be. What was it here? You're supposed to be in language study, and she's fighting somebody with gauntlets. You know,
Right.
There's always.
Yeah, you can't put down the Skywalker blood.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, but there's that line between where she was raised to be a diplomat, but
Yeah.
there's like the heart of a warrior in her, which is like her whole character basically throughout Star Wars.
Yeah.
That line between that. We also in this book once again get, like in Vader, sort of a sidekick character of sorts.
What's her name?
That's what I'm trying to
Crap.
get the name of.
But that's one of the other things that I like within that sidekick character, how she keeps on formally talking to Princess Leia, and Princess Leia is...
Your Majesty.
Exactly, and Princess Leia is kind of like, no, that's not me. Stop. You know, this is not who I want to be. I don't want to be seen as the head of anything. I just care for my people. And I really like the closure that we get on this whole Alderaan situation. That I guess you kind of wonder about it in Empire, how she just, okay, so we're not dealing with that issue at all. We kind of just move on. And
Or even in the latter half of A New Hope, just like, how are you not freaking the
Exactly.
F out right now?
And that to me almost can be written off to some extent in like, because in the latter half of New Hope, a lot of it is we escape from the Death Star and we immediately go to blow up the Death Star. I mean, like there's a hard shift, and I think that's what this comic is about. Like, given the time now, okay, we took care of that. Now I have time to really think that Alderaan's gone, because I immediately had to go lead the rebels.
Right.
By the way, that girl's name is Evan. Evan.
Evan?
Evan. Yes, that's her name.
Great.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, I guess that's right. I don't know. I didn't- but yeah, she's an interesting character, and we also get to see the end of this book was so cool, where like you get to see Leia outsmart somebody, like
Yeah.
she does. It wasn't. You see that strategistic mind that she has at the beginning of Jedi.
Yeah.
Where you see like, oh, she's somebody who can like manipulate a situation, and I can see. You can see that person who has a thermal detonator at the beginning of that and stuff. You know?
well, and I also really like that we see the Empire kind of send out this task force, like, go make sure everybody from Alderaan was destroyed.
Yeah.
Like, we need to make sure, like, if we're taking over, you know, they blew up our Death Star, we need to make sure that...
Well, it
This was
takes it
all-
back to something I liked in Force Awakens, which I really feel like they, is hinted at in the original movies, but is made clear in that, is like, this is a oppressive force that is committing genocide. Like,
Yeah.
they are wiping out entire cultures of people. And I think that certainly Leia makes that very clear when it's like, we are going to wipe off the face of the universe, anyone who has any connection to Alderaan. That will just be gone from history even. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah.
And it makes it clear that, like, this is precisely what they did with the Jedi as well.
Yeah, which that to me, I do like when they make that clear about the Empire. And sometimes I'm looking at Gorgoni wearing an Imperial shirt or something. I'm just like,
Look, I'm saying that they
Yikes.
maintained structure, great health plan,
yeah.
and everyone got paid for what they were doing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, look, they manage things very well.
There's
and
hazard pay,
including
okay?
Genocide.
This really is
Trains are always on time.
This really is the Princess Leia story that I think a lot of people wanted because it gives some legitimacy to her character that we don't have.
Exactly. Well, because I mean, you watch. I'm gonna excuse me as I take a shot at George Lucas because nobody's ever done that. Like George Lucas, Princess Leia almost doesn't give a damn about really in the first movie beyond like she needs to be saved. Mm-hmm. It's not till Kasdan comes in that she's like, oh wow, this is like a fascinating woman who's got colors to her and is really. I mean, she's capable in Star Wars. You see that when she's
blasting open the garbage chute. Get in there.
Yeah. But it's like Kasdan. It seems like when Kasdan wrote Empire, he seized on those couple moments in Star Wars and built an entire character out of that. And once again, seized on that relationship with Han. And that comes out of that feistiness that they both have.
Yeah.
Where it's and obviously he wrote Empire and Jedi, and I think that continues into Jedi as well. When you do see her breaking into an Imperial base at the end and kicking ass, like this is so I feel like this is the book that sort of explains that she was always that person. Mm-hmm. It's there's not necessarily like a shift in her in Empire. We see that she had those skills. She just now has a place to demonstrate those.
She's not someone working for the Imperial Senate ferrying like random notices from Alderaan to the other worlds.
Right.
Because I will say there
i.e. maybe her mother. George dropped the ball there, I think.
Yeah. A little bit.
I don't want to say George Lucas can't write women, but maybe look at his movies. So Princess Leia,
really fun, really
super fun book.
Mm-hmm.
Should we look at Shattered Empire? This was the one with the most, I feel like, hype to a certain extent.
Well, because it was, again, that thing of
this
just
is the only
like,
one that they attached the moniker of Journey to Star Wars The Force Awakens.
And this one was hyped as it's the first thing to happen after Return of the Jedi. Like, this is the first little bit that's going to fill that 30-year gap that Force Awakens gave
An all-new explosive tale spinning out of Return of the Jedi.
And it does just that.
Journey with us into the time after the end of Star Wars Return of the Jedi. It is like take us past the destruction of the second Death Star and into the chaos of a shattered empire. Everything you need to know is right here, it declares on the back of this book.
I don't know about everything.
Yeah.
I don't know that anything I need to know is in this book.
To be fair, that first issue I really, really loved, where we're right in the middle of the dogfight that's happening right outside the second Death Star. Like, we're following a fighter pilot who's in the middle of that conflict. Like, we see Lando flying the Falcon and Wedge in his X-Wing kind of, like, zooming in there. And our main character through this series is, what's her name? Shara is the character's name?
Dameron.
No, because this...
Kes Dameron is her...
Is her husband.
Are they married at this point?
I think they get married at some point in the series.
But
but this book is basically following Poe Dameron's parents.
Yeah, I think
they're already married.
I think they are married.
Because she already has a son.
No, she doesn't already have a son at the beginning of it. On the battle of when the battle on Endor.
They talk about like I never get to see my son.
I thought that came later.
I think she mentions
time passes here. I thought.
Yeah, but anyway, we're following these two characters that are Poe Dameron's parents. Mostly the mother, but we get to follow the father a little bit as well.
Right. Which is the of anything in this is the biggest connection to Force Awakens, actually.
Right.
Is the fact that one of the main characters from that is his parents are in this.
Right.
But I agree with you, Gorgoni, that I think that the first issue was awesome. It starts off on this big bang, but then it just kind of slows down the next three issues.
I mean, like there's stuff in it that's cool, but it doesn't have much impact to me. It's like it's awesome to see Han Solo going around and like blowing up the remaining Imperial base,
commandos and stuff. Yeah,
yeah. Like, but that's all just like that's cool because I always like to see Han Solo doing stuff or seeing Luke on a secret mission and stuff like that. But it doesn't add up to anything,
right?
It
just felt like fluff, I guess.
Yeah.
It's fun window dressing, but it's not necessarily substantive in any way.
I mean, seeing that celebration on Endor is really cool, where it's like, yeah, and getting to see, like you said, like the other pilots, there were individuals involved in this that we didn't really get to see, but it just does feel like, okay.
Yeah, right. It's 4 issues of just like, well, okay, sure. Like this is stuff that's happening immediately after, and it paints a picture of a galaxy that's still that is still a mess. Like when the second Death Star got blown up, the Empire just didn't go away. So this definitely leads you to believe, like, okay, clearly something like the First Order can crop up after the events of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, but it's there's nothing revelatory in it. It's just like, okay, yeah, I guess I figured that would be the case.
One thing, I mean, there's a bunch of like little cool things. It's just like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. But they don't add up to like. And of course, this would all lead into The Force Awakens.
The sum of its parts are really not.
Like because each issue kind of follows.
By the way, Shara is her name.
Okay. Each issue kind of follows these two characters as they do something with one of the main characters. Generally.
Yes.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of a book I recommended on here called Rebel Heist, where each issue was somebody doing something with one of the main characters, but that all added up to they were each one part of the same mission.
Right. Whereas this feels very much scattershot.
Right.
And like I said, in each one there is cool little things. Like in the Leia issue, we have Shara going around with Leia, and they're trying to prevent Naboo from being like burned because the Emperor left like secret orders to like, okay, should I die, I want the galaxy to know that I will not go down without taking people with me.
Yeah.
So burn my home world.
Well, there's the guy who keeps talking about how the Emperor isn't dead.
Oh, like some people are convinced the Emperor isn't dead, right?
Yeah.
Well, one thing
Which I like all that stuff because that gets into this like propaganda about like it almost not like North
like,
Korean thing where it's like
don't
he
believe
can't
the rebel
be killed,
propaganda.
right?
Not our Emperor.
I did like seeing the weird like droid with the video screen face that showed the Emperor just like, and here are my orders.
Yeah.
Once again, very cool individual idea,
Right.
Like but yeah,
Or the thing with the Luke story where you have these like trees that are like locusts of the Force that Luke has to go rescue. That was cool.
Individual idea.
But again, none of it really adds up to anything. None of it even really plays into The Force Awakens.
We don't know where those
pretty much none of it.
We don't know where those trees are going.
It doesn't play into Force Awakens. There's some. There's
Honestly,
actually
they
this,
could play further in.
Well,
this one has some prequel stuff in it as I'm flipping through in here.
Oh, actually, I really like the scene on Naboo where Leia's going through like the hangar and like she gets like she feels a cold presence. She feels like the remnants of Darth Maul, where he like fought and killed Qui-Gon Jinn. Like that was cool.
Yeah, that's all right.
John, that was pretty cool.
showing her like being able to connect to the Force in that way.
Yeah.
I think those are the
like
small
these ships
bits
from
that come
Phantom
out
Menace, actually.
in
Those starfighters, those yellow starfighters.
The Naboo starfighters.
Those are actually that's a really cool design of ship.
I think there's small elements that pop up in The Force Awakens, but I don't think it's anything. It doesn't help me understand the movie anymore.
No.
It doesn't. There's not a giant
doesn't
backstory
really
now
add to
created
anything.
for Poe Dameron or anything. It's just
No, that's the interesting thing
it's
about it.
fun
Is like,
little stories.
Oh, good. His parents were badasses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not
Okay,
everything
so is
that
he.
I
Yeah,
need
this
to
is like-
know.
I guess
he is a descendant of badassery.
the Dameron family is inherently badass. It runs in the blood. You know? It's just
Right.
like, yeah. All right. He got the badass gene.
Coming from both sides.
Yeah, that's great. But whatever.
But yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's more Star Wars, which I'm always a fan of.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. I did not.
But how it was
I
advertised,
enjoyed
how it
reading
was
it.
hyped.
Yes, I enjoyed reading it. It was very fun. But I really, of any of them, I left it the most just going like, yeah.
Because, I would say of these four, like, first collections, if you were going to read any of them, I would start with Star Wars. Mm-hmm. I would say, I know you're going to disagree with me, but I would say follow that up with Vader, because I feel like those two books are tied so closely together.
If you're going to read both of them, you got to read Star Wars first. I feel like you don't jump into don't Vader under no circumstances read Vader on its own. I feel like.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's not a good book in a vacuum, or at least the first trade definitely isn't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
well, I feel like those are the. I mean, like I said, if you're gonna read one, I say Star Wars is the one to read.
Yeah.
But if you want to read
And then if
another
you're gonna
one,
read the second one, it's got to be Vader.
I mean,
or Leia. Like,
Leia's really
good.
fun, but it doesn't.
But it
feed
stands
in
alone.
as much. Yeah, exactly.
but to a certain extent, that's why Leia might even be the best one to if you just read
Yeah,
on its own.
that's true. That's
It's
true.
the most just isolated, like fun Star Wars adventure that you still. That I still felt something from in a way that I didn't get from Shattered Empire.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, oh wow, okay, this was cool. This showed me something, and it does make me view the movies in a new way now.
Yeah.
Like it really helps.
As opposed to Shattered Empire, which is like, if you really need more Star Wars, go read the old Dark Horse stuff, and then maybe pick up Shattered Empire.
Yeah, exactly. Or pick up Lando. You know?
Or pick up Lando, or pick up Vader. Chewie's
about
now.
to come out. Yeah, Vader Down will be out, I think, in March.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot. There's going to be a lot of Star Wars stuff. There's going to be a 3PO.
I'm excited about it.
And again, really interested to see what they do in the future to fill the big gap between.
We'll see that for the first time.
Give me more Voberdand. I want to see his illustrious rise to middle management.
We will see that
To middle management.
Look, he's the guy telling when the fighters can like land and like take off. He's not really grasping for general status.
No.
He
Boy.
really likes where he's at. He's got a modicum of power.
He's taking good notes in those big press
Once again,
conferences.
But he's a very important link in the chain of the resistance.
once again, reading into this from one line of dialogue.
Hey,
Look.
and a shocked expression on his face.
And he also has a page in the visual dictionary, John.
Yes, he does. Somehow he got a page in there. I don't know how that is.
And he's a stickler for the rules.
Which is established when?
In that one sentence he gets in the page from the visual dictionary. If you go on the Wikipedia, his entry in there is basically the line he has in the movie, a brief description, and the line that is given in the visual dictionary. Just
Awesome.
like, that's all we know about Voberdand. I need to know
Amazing.
more.
Do we know who Miles from Lost is in Star Wars at this point? Right? He's
Oh, I don't. I mean, he's
I don't
one of
know
the
what that
he's
guy's
one of
name
the
is.
upper echelon of
I want to know more about him.
resistance
Does he
people.
still see dead people? That's what I want
But
to know.
that leads me to a question I have
They
for
all
you guys,
dead
which
people
is
in Lost?
no.
He sees
No, people misunderstand the end of Lost. And I don't want to turn this into a 20-minute thing, but that is people who didn't watch the last season. They only watched the last episode. They don't understand what that ending means. What I was going to say though is, what series would you guys like to see? Aside from Voberdand,
Other than Voberdand.
yeah. Putting that aside for a second, what would you like to see them do? Because I mean, the universe is kind of open to Marvel at this point. It seems like they could kind of do anything as long as they don't infringe on what the movies are doing.
I know we're probably going to be seeing a bit of this in Rogue One, but give me Rogue Squadron. Like, I miss my old Rogue Squadron books. We're following Wedge, we're following Nien Nunb, we're following all of those like cocky fighter pilots as they're mopping up the Empire in that 30-year gap.
I mean, do you think that the Poe Dameron comic might give you some of that vibe?
Hopefully.
I mean, because that's going to be about Poe and his Black Squadron.
Sure, and I want to see, oh my god, if he was like trained how to be a fighter pilot by Wedge, oh, that'd be awesome.
really cool.
The only description I've heard of that book is that it's going to be Mission Impossible in a Star Wars setting.
Isn't that Rogue One?
Yeah,
I don't know.
pretty much.
I mean, that's what we know. Rogue One's like a heist movie. They're stealing the plans for the Death
But
Star.
Mission Impossible is not. I mean, it's going to be
Sure,
like an
yeah.
espionage story. I mean, like when we see Poe Dameron, he's on a secret mission.
No,
from,
it's
you know.
true.
So I mean, so what I get, it's going to be like a secret agent book.
I want to see. I mean, we're probably going to get this
With
in the movies,
BB-8 as
but
well.
an exploration of the Star Wars or the Jedi Academy.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Luke
yeah,
set up
yeah. That's
before-
kind of the book I would be most interested
Before
in.
Ben Solo went all crazy pants and Kylo Ren them all.
Yeah. Well, I want to explore who are the Knights of Ren. Like, there's a bunch of other guys standing around.
And again, this is stuff we're probably going to get in the movies going forward.
Of course, yeah.
Hopefully.
Oh,
But
I mean, I don't think there's any way that 8 isn't about this to some extent.
I should hope so.
I mean, if Luke is going to start talking, he's probably going to talk about what happened.
Luke has
If
no
he
lines
starts
through the
talking.
whole series.
He's taken a vow of silence.
He just has like mournful looks into the distance.
He lost
That's
his
all he
vocal
gets.
cords.
Yeah, they're just like anytime they mention Kylo Ren, he's just like,
Just looking off in the distance.
Amazing.
If
Mark.
the next movie was just wistful looks from Mark Hamill, I wouldn't be disappointed per se.
I would see
2
it
hours
near
of
the
that
10
shot of him
times.
from the end of the movie.
Yeah, sure.
He's sad. Yeah, but Donovan, Ian, anything you particularly want to see from?
I mean, I
Star
like
Wars?
the idea. I mean, we talked about it with I can't remember the name of that book and with Shadows of the Empire, but the layest stuff between
Empire and Jedi.
I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
And I think Maz Kanata, I threw that out there.
Yeah,
but
that'd
that'd
be
be
a
a fun
super
book.
fun book. Just like even spanning like thousand years
Yeah.
and just like her career going
Yeah.
all over time. That'd
Yeah,
be fun.
yeah.
Well, and we talked about I think before we were on mic, but the tree that the Damerons get
No,
at the end.
Nope.
What?
it's not planted on her world.
Are you sure?
I was just looking at it. It is definitely not on my. I mean,
It's got those like ziggurat kind of.
yeah. There's ziggurats all over the place. There's ziggurats on Yavin. There's
I
ziggurats
understand.
everywhere.
Do we know where Poe Dameron was raised? Does the visual dictionary give us any of that?
I would have to go look, but yeah, that is not like look
You
at that
don't
picture.
think so?
There's too many cigarettes.
It's forest.
That looks like a Jedi temple of some kind.
Okay, maybe. I don't know. Maybe
Doesn't look like Maz Kanata's castle.
I'd be curious to see if we get more of the
Yeah,
force trees
I don't know where that
going
is.
forward.
Or just like locuses of force energy, because we know, or we don't know, but we're led to assume that there's some kind of forcey stuff going on with Luke/Anakin's lightsaber when Rey touches it and she gets all force vision.
Yeah,
up in
well,
there.
and you've got the dark side cave in Empire.
Right.
So I mean, there's these moments that can happen. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool to
yeah.
explore some of that.
Yeah, I think
all
a
of the
Maz Kanata book could
Horcruxes
be.
of the Force.
Horcruxes of the force.
That's what I would call that book.
Could be really fun.
I think that the book that I would love, I know like that they're coming out with a Han Solo origin story and stuff like that. And I remember reading the Han Solo trilogy in the expanded universe, and it really wasn't the Han Solo stories that I was looking for. But I would love to see just like Han Solo, Chewbacca, like buddy cop stuff.
Yep.
I mean, I think that just the growth
Lethal
of that
weapon in
relationship,
space, yeah.
exactly. Because I think that those two have the best relationship out of any characters in any of the movies. I mean, especially we saw it in The Force Awakens too, just the way that Chewie and Han interact with each other.
Yeah.
Those are those one-liners back and forth, and so that would
cold.
be exactly that would be the series that I would want to see. And
I agree, yeah.
And I think that it could be put at any point. It doesn't have to be early on Han, or like it could happen at any point. Just missions with just Han and and Chewbacca. Just
I do think it's really interesting.
Mr. Wookiee is his father.
I do think it's really interesting that in this first run we didn't get a Han Solo book. He is the most popular character in Star Wars.
I feel like that has something to do with
I mean, Han is
Disney
all
knew
over
what was
the
going
Star Wars book.
Sure, sure.
But it's not a Han book.
But Disney knew that going into Force Awakens, he was going to be the one that gets the axe. So I feel like giving him a book,
He gets a lightsaber.
lightsaber to the chest, yes. But giving him a book beforehand, I feel like now that we know, like, okay, we know where this story ends with Han Solo, we can go back and dig into some of the older stuff. But if we'd given him a book like right before the movie had come out, I feel like that might have been a misstep.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I just
That's
think
just me.
it just seems like, on the list
I feel like we're going to get one. There's no way we don't.
Well, I said, he's, most popular character in Star Wars.
Right.
He's going to get his own book at some point.
Sure.
If not, a mini-series, or if not, just give him an ongoing. Jeez,
Right.
come on. That book would sell like crazy.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, there's no question that this Poe Dameron book is a fan-demanded thing. I mean, I don't think they were prepared for how popular that character has become.
Which definitely makes me a little leery of if something's made on the mandate of the fans. I forget who said it, but some creator was just like, the fans don't know what they want.
I don't. Yeah, I think.
Was
I
that
think.
Joss
I do,
Whedon?
Was that
was
Joss
Joss
Whedon?
Whedon? Yeah,
Sounds like a Joss
I think
Whedon.
it is a Joss Whedon quote, but I think he's talking more about story specific. I
Sure.
think there is a lot of potential for a Poe Dameron
yeah,
story.
sure.
But that character has skyrocketed in popularity from the Force Awakens movie.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a reason he didn't die in the movie, because there's that story of just like they were planning on killing him as they were making the movie, but everyone involved was just like, we like this character, so let's not kill him because he's cool.
Exactly. And I'm sure that comic will only help to prove how cool he is.
Yeah.
And it will give people more BB-8, who they really love.
That's true. Though unless there's like a little tab in the side of the comic book that makes the sounds for you, I feel like you'd have to just get a recording and play it
They'll
for
figure
yourself.
out how to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
Chewie's pretty endearing in these comics.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, cool. So that's the first round of Star Wars comics. I'm sure we'll touch on Star Wars comics again at some point in the
I
future.
will always be touching on Star Wars comics. I'm touching them right now, John.
Yeah, exactly. And because Marvel certainly has no intention of stopping these anytime soon.
Didn't Disney just recently come out and say like the Marvel Star Wars stuff is never going to stop if they have anything to say about it?
Well, they said the Marvel and Star Wars movies will
Right.
never end.
Right.
That they have no intention of ever stopping Marvel or Star Wars movies.
Sure.
There will never be an end point.
And as far as I can tell, that all associated media around that will probably keep on going so long as that movie franchise is continuing.
Oh yeah. I don't see that happen. And
we're only a couple of years away, I feel like, from just a glut of Star Wars and Marvel video games.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time. Mm-hmm. So
Until
we're on
then,
top
play
of
the Bounty Hunter video game, the Jango Fett one. Over
that. Actually,
and over and over
just
again.
came out. They re-released it on PS4. You can
they
pick it up.
didn't.
Yeah, Star Wars Bounty Hunter.
All right.
It's not a terrible game.
All of my time.
It's all of it really. That game's it's not that long of a game.
He'll just play it again.
Fair enough.
Play it backwards. Play it in Korean.
Sure, yeah. Why not?
Cool. Okay, so as we wrap that up, we turn now to the way we end every episode with our recommendation segment, where we recommend comics we think you should be reading. Ian, you're our guest panelist. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, one comic that I'd like to recommend for those who are wanting to get maybe into some of the Dark Horse Star Wars stuff, some of the older Star Wars stuff, is one of the first Star Wars comic books I ever read, which is Darth Vader in the Ghost Prison.
It's good.
It's written by Hayden Blackman. I know Gorgoni can back me up on this one. And it's kind of the Empire kind of finds out that there's some sort of would you say spy or someone who's infiltrated their system and kind of
Mole, I think.
And so it's kind of this Darth Vader's then kind of gone. He's kind of sent on the mission to figure out who kind of blew up this Empire base, and he ends up finding this what's called the Ghost Prison, which is kind of this prison that's is not on any record anywhere.
It's not supposed to exist. This is where you send people who want to just disappear.
Exactly. And so if you like Darth Vader and you like that character and you want to see more of just him, maybe not a book for you, John, but but for people who really like rooting for the dark side and Darth Vader especially, this is a great place to jump in. It's I want to say it was like 4 or 6 issues, maybe max.
There's a lot of miniseries like this in the Dark Horse run of just like little side stories with Vader or other characters.
Well, they didn't take this Marvel approach about like we're going to link everything. It was just like here's this Star Wars comic, that Star Wars comic.
They also had Star
here.
Wars for what, like 20 years,
25 years, probably something like that. Yeah,
they're maybe
our whole lives they had
maybe at first that's what their approach was, but after a certain point they can just like do whatever you want. It's Star Wars. We got all the time in the world.
We're publishing 500 more of these things,
right?
So it's a good jumping in point if you just want to read a fun story. It's not a long time to read it. You don't have to jump into a series or anything like that. It's just a good graphic novel to pick up sometime, and I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
I mean, mine kind of piggybacks off of that a little bit because my recommendation is an older Dark Horse Star Wars comic as well. Earlier we were talking about Star Wars stories that, like, taken by themselves, nothing's refuting them in the new canon, so we can still enjoy them as just like this could or could not have happened.
Right.
This one kind of takes that to the nth degree, and this is Star Wars Legacy.
Oh yes.
It was written. There was a lot of writers in the series. It went on forever, but primarily it was written by John Ostrander and Jan Duursema. I think
this is an Ostrander book. I didn't know he did this.
Yeah.
Oh man, one of my all-time favorites.
But so the two of them kind of like co-plotted and co-scripted it, with Jan Duursema doing a lot of the art as well. But this story takes place like hundreds of years after Star Wars has ended. We're dealing with like Cade Skywalker. He is a descendant of Luke Skywalker, and him kind of...
It always comes back to the Skywalkers.
Him kind of having to deal with that legacy and having these expectations on him of being a Skywalker. It's a really good series. There's 4 really, really beautiful hardcover omnibuses of the whole series out that you can track down. It's just like really fun Star Wars stuff. It deals with like the Sith Empire coming back into power and still dealing with remnants of the original Empire, and their Gray Order of Jedi. So you kind of have this like 3-sided fight of like Jedi, Sith, and the Imperial Knights. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy that series.
Cool.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. Donovan?
I've got... it's just the first issue just came out, but Old Man Logan by Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino. And it's, for people who don't know, Logan kind of gave up being Wolverine and is a much older guy in the distant future who's got a family and a farm. And he's trying to make it work, and the Hulk gang and all kinds of ruffians are making life hard for him. And then all of a sudden he gets shot back to our time as this kind of older, kind of sour, not that he wasn't sour before, but even more sour man.
He was such an upbeat presence before.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not whistling and skipping anymore?
Not as much. And
that's how I think of Wolverine.
Yeah. And he apparently hasn't seen Back to the Future because he is now going to take out all the people who in the future are going to wrong him. So he's just taking people out, and...
he didn't take the as borderline Bible word of Robert Zemeckis about time travel.
Yep, exactly. So he's trying to eliminate all the threats before they happen, and it's
I'm not going to comment. So this
Zemeckis
doesn't become another
time travel.
hour to this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We already did that podcast. Anyways, I read it. It was really fun. Wasn't expecting to pick it up, but the guy at the comic shop was like, "Oh man, you got to check it out," and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
John?
Mine is a different tie-in book. It's not a Star Wars book. I mentioned Obi-Wan and Anakin earlier, but check that out. Charles Soule did that. But the other tie-in book that I have is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers by
Go on.
by Kyle Higgins, the great Kyle Higgins, and oh boy, here we go. Art is by Hendry Prasetya.
Sure.
Hendry Prasetya. Anyway, issue 0 of this just came out.
Oh, what?
Yeah. It's going to be an ongoing series, but that starts in March. But issue 0 came out, and oh man, is this good. This has no business being as good as it is.
I know a little bit about this book. We're following the Green Ranger Tommy like after he's been.
The issue 0 starts just after the events of the Green Ranger saga.
So they've kind of like pulled him back from the dark side.
He's a Power Ranger now, but he keeps having these dreams about slaughtering the Power Rangers and taking over the world
because he was like
at the hand
programmed
of
by
Rita
Rita
Repulsa.
Repulsa.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, though, like
Such deep nerd
but
canon.
what's amazing is he has done like something I always thought, which is like Power Rangers is a cool setup for something. Its execution was terrible. He's making the execution awesome.
Well, anything that Kyle Higgins touches automatically gets better.
It's great.
He's
I mean,
a
like he
phenomenal
is
writer.
really. It's a dark story. It's this dark, intense story about this guy who's like, I was evil and I did terrible things, and you can call me a hero, but I'll never feel like one.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's so good.
Does he get to use the flute?
He hasn't yet. But we do get to see Megazords and stuff, and like,
nice.
but he's also like has an inability. He like freezes up anytime Jason gives him an order and stuff because he's like, I can't, I'm not, and so he's like a detriment to the team and stuff the show never would have gotten
Sure,
into.
yeah.
But yeah, it's
You mean it's not just 22 minutes of kung fu action, 5 minutes of transformation, and 3 of Megazord?
Wait, hold on. You're forgetting the 1 minute of the high school bullying in the little
that's
dojo.
right.
but there is the Adventures of Bulk and Skull, a little,
my
two,
God.
a little
Bulk and
ongoing 2-page thing at the back of the book that I assume will continue throughout it.
Awesome.
Does it end with Rita saying she has a headache? That's what I want to know.
No, once again, he's really like taking out a lot of the silliness. Bulk and Skull have their own little side thing where they can be silly, but like the book is really like, let's take this story and treat it like a serious superhero
So
story.
Rita is a legitimately scary moon witch
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
who was
Absolutely.
trapped in a trash can
Absolutely.
for 1,000 years.
And there's no question that this is meant to lead us to what this movie that's coming out, I believe, next summer, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, that's going to be trying to do the same thing about taking a serious approach to this storyline.
Interesting. And yet they cast, what's her name as Rita Repulsa?
Elizabeth Banks.
Elizabeth Banks.
I think that's a good choice.
Yeah, sure. I'm wondering if they're going for serious, though, with that casting.
She's done dramatic acting.
She was
Sure.
in that movie about the kicker. I think it was called The Kicker with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, that was it. The kicker. I don't know. Yeah, I think. They've got the guys who wrote X-Men First Class
Yeah.
writing it, and that's a good choice.
Yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic about that. But this comic is
I'm
great.
fully in.
Forget what the movie.
I
Power Rangers.
definitely want to check out this comic.
It's
I'm
Kyle.
fully-
Yeah, as I
I'm-
said, anything. I mean, they got. I wasn't going to read this book, but then when they said Kyle Higgins was writing, I'm like, well, I guess I got to check it out then.
Because I'm all Team Green Ranger. None of that pansy White Ranger crap.
And they put out, I believe, 8 variant covers, so you can
God.
pick which Ranger you want.
Nice.
Wait,
Some
hold on.
that are
So you
now
have
going for
5, 6 Rangers,
Yeah,
and what are the other 2 then?
Well, because
I
they
don't
do
know.
white as well as green.
they do white and green.
so that
Which I
makes
think
7.
the White Ranger one, somebody said, is going for like $600 on Amazon.
this book has
Billy,
become.
Zach, Jason, Trini, Kimberly,
Jason.
No, I already said
Jason
Jason.
again as. Oh, sorry,
No,
Tommy.
Tommy
again.
and then Tommy.
Yeah.
So
That makes 7.
Ivan Ooze.
Maybe it's 7. I don't know.
Ivan
I
Ooze
don't-
makes 8.
but anyway, yeah.
So Apocalypse.
But like Donovan said, the Green and White Ranger were very limited variants, so they are weird. But I mean, this book sold out like crazy. Nobody expected this to be as popular as it was. So like, I have the Red Ranger cover, and it's already worth like $50.
Damn.
Yeah, it's
Man.
insane. It's
That's
insane.
issue 0.
It's issue 0.
So I'm guessing it's only like 12 pages or something.
no, it's a full.
It's a full issue?
It's a full 22-page comic.
Why not launch this as issue 1 then? That's
I don't know.
confusing.
I do not know.
Okay.
But like I
This is the
said,
hype.
it's already doing way better than anybody
Sure,
expected, and
okay.
it's really good. Like
Okay.
it's worth it. Cool. So check those comics out. If you want to let us know what you think about them or anything else, we are on Twitter. We're at Panel on Panels. We're on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. Email us at panelonpanels@gmail.com. And of
Love
course,
to hear from you guys.
Rate and review us on iTunes or Stitcher. And
it really helps us out if you can just give us all the stars.
I know every podcast says that, but
it does
for,
help us
for
out,
a reason.
Yeah.
Every podcast says that. Yeah, it's a good thing. Cool. So I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of Panel on Panels. I've been John Campbell.
I am currently Mike Gorgoni.
And I will always be Donovan Eilert.
Keep reading comics, everybody.